Mayor's Show for the month of June 2023. Thanks for joining us. I'm here in the Town Meeting TV studios, and I'm joined today by Samantha Sheehan, who is the Communications Director for the City of Burlington, and we have a discussion planned about the budget that just passed this year, the FY24 budget. It's always a little bit confusing. We start our fiscal year on July 1, and so it's sort of New Year's Day on July 1 in the city, and the way our system works, it's the mayor's job to present a budget to the city council by the middle of June, and then the council has until the end of the month to review the budget, consider changes to it, and pass the budget, and they did so this past Monday on June 26th, and we're speaking on the 28th, and so it's fresh in our mind, and I think it is worth pointing. This is actually the end of we basically are working on the budget for the upcoming year most of the year. So this is a significant milestone and represents months of work, and this year, excuse me, this year, honestly, it was more work than normal. This is my 12th budget now, which is always a little bit of a surprise, even to me. Can't believe it's been so long. And looking back on the 12 budget, we've always put a lot of effort in the budgets. When I first ran, the city was in real financial challenges, and the route out of those challenges was through disciplined, careful budgeting. And so it's never been easy, but this year we had extra challenges that some of them are kind of unique to the city, some of them as a result of the larger economic climate and other kind of larger macro issues. And I think critically we've come to the end of the process, and I think there's a lot in this budget to feel excited about, feel good about if you're a member of the community, and we'll talk about all that. We'll talk about the challenges and the good elements as well. Samantha, any thoughts you want to offer? Any reflections on? You haven't been through 12 of these. This is
no, technically 2.
Yeah,
technically this is my second experience with the budget, and this was, I think, unique from the last budget I remember going through, in that that one included a lot of federal support that provided a lot of flexibility despite the challenges, whereas this one required a really creative patchwork of solutions to maintain a really as low as we could achieve increase in the tax rate.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's a lot less federal money this year. It's sort of our third year of federal supports, and we have been moving away each year by plan. The other big change this time, I think we might have a slide on all the challenges, but the other big change this year is it was our second year in a row of very substantial inflation. And something that's always been clear to me in this role is city budgeting is really tough when you have inflation. Even when we had really low inflation, the 2 or 3% of a year that inflation we had always outpaced the new revenues that we would get, because our biggest source of revenue is property taxes. And property taxes, the way it works here in Vermont, the way our system works, and this always, actually, a lot of people don't believe it until you really property taxes the revenue to the city does not go up unless one of two things happens. One, there's new development, new investment, people putting more value into their properties. That does increase revenue. The other thing that increases revenue is a vote by the people of Burlington. I'm simplifying a little bit, but generally speaking, that's the way most of the property tax is controlled. So it's something that no one likes to go to the voters very often and ask for changes like that. So we have not had a voter-approved tax increase since 2020. So that's 3 years of kind of historically high levels of inflation without a kind of comparable adjustment to the rate on the revenue side, and that was probably the biggest single challenge. What else do we?
So let's talk about. Yeah. We've talked a lot about the challenges. Let's talk about what's in the budget. What do we get?
Excellent. Yes, it's good to know there is a lot of good in this $100 million budget, it is, first of all, this is some of the top highlights. There is substantial increase, and actually, I'm not even sure. I think that probably the thing maybe some voters are most excited about is that bullet number 2 there, we are continuing the rebuilding and the rebuilding and the revamping of the way in which we deliver public safety. So $1.3 million of new investment is projected this year into the rebuilding of the Burlington Police Department. A lot of that is going to the expectation that we will be adding officers over the course of this year from the kind of historic lows that we've been at over the last couple of years. That also includes some expansion in the way that we deliver public safety with these alternative resources, more social workers, this crisis response team that we've been working for years. All of that is in this budget.
And some significant funds to BFD as well for new firefighters and increases in the wages for the firefighters.
That's right. So we are, and it's exciting. The fire department, after some challenging times with staffing there, it's everywhere in city government, like much of the economy, there has been real staffing challenges. We are back up to a fully staffed fire department, and that includes 3 additional firefighters over past years as a result of the most recent collective bargaining round, responding to the additional burdens, the additional calls. We are going to a historic number of responses in the fire department at this point. Other highlights of this budget, there is the Burlington Electric Department is continuing to offer these very generous, significant incentives for Burlington businesses and homeowners that are ready to electrify their vehicles and their buildings. This is the way we are going to combat and defeat the climate emergency. At least it's a big part of the way we're going to do it is through electrifying everything. And Burlington, Burlington is as good a city as there is anywhere in the country if you are ready to consider those investments in your homes because of these green incentives, which you can now layer on top of extremely generous federal incentives as well. So this is the best time there's ever been to consider a electric vehicle or a cold climate heat pump. I just put in it's time to replace our water heater. You can do that now too. You can have a cold climate heat pump water heater, and it actually dehumidifies your basement at the same time. Another example of how when we electrify everything, life gets kind of more awesome. Your basement will be a little drier once you do that, and
pretty cool.
The Burlington Electric Department can help pay for it.
Yeah, my oil hot water heater does not dehumidify my basement. That's for sure. So let's talk about bullet point number 3. This was a point of a lot of debate and discussion amongst counselors when considering to pass the budget. And I think there's some confusion because we'll get to the tax implications before we end our time here. But one of them was a 0.5 cent increase in the street capital tax. That increase brought in, I think, what was it, around $300,000 additional dollars for paving.
That's right.
But that was a piece of a much bigger strategy within DPW related to really what's over $1 million in funds for paving and patching and ongoing investment driven by the voter-approved capital bond from just a year ago.
That's right. So since 2016, it's been a major priority of mine for us to really change the trajectory of our public infrastructure. In a number, we have a lot of public infrastructure we're responsible for. It's one of the great legacies in some ways of being an older community is we have centuries of accumulated investments in great public spaces and public infrastructure. We also have a lot of aging infrastructure that needs taken care of. And since 2016, we've been making a real push on that. This year will be another year in which we are making, relative to our historic levels of investment, 2 and 3 times the multiples of what we used to put into key assets. So we now redo about 3 miles of sidewalk a year. We have sustained that since 2016, and we're just at about that level this year. That's in comparison to 1 mile a year annually. The streets have gotten very expensive and has made it challenging to keep the same clip of investment that we have had since 2016.
And that's an area really impacted by inflation.
Yeah, that's the cost there. I mean, it's more than inflation there. It just costs, that was the construction costs have really been one of the areas of the economy that has had the most, increase in costs. And even within construction, I would say for reasons I don't fully understand, asphalt and paving has seen particularly high increases. And so we're spending a lot of money, a lot more money than we have historically. It's not getting as much in the way of new roadways, but still, when you combine what we're doing now at the local level with the state paving that is going to be taking place on Winooski Avenue and other areas of the city, we will be at about 5 miles of roads being redone in the city, which is a good, healthy amount. And that, I don't think, includes the substantial work going on the Parkway as well, which is cleared its nearly final legal hurdle and is under full steam construction right now, and which should be elements of that should be open within about a year from now. You know, I was on Pine Street today and I saw something that
they're coming up to Pine.
They are coming up to Pine, and one of the big challenges, legal challenges in getting this done is that there are some vestigial rails on Pine Street that haven't been used in decades, but that there were still legal rights attached to them. I saw the rails coming out today. So
oh, really?
That means the new sidewalk, multi-use path will be going in along Pine Street soon. The new curbing work, there'll be new granite curbs. New granite curbs all the way down Pine Street, that's coming soon, and as well as the raised intersections that will slow down traffic, make those intersections safer for pedestrians and bikers. It's, we've been talking about this for so long. I think it will actually surprise people how much of an improvement I think it is when it gets done.
So we've talked about some of the investments that Burlingtonians will see this year as a result of this budget. We've talked about some of the challenges. Let's look at the bottom line. So the FY24, this says proposed budget, because I took it from an old slide deck. Now it is the approved, the budget will be just over $100 million. That represents about a 4% increase in expenses. Although, as we've discussed, I mean, inflation over the last 12 months is really closer to almost 7%. So 4% feels like a big number, but is also well under the real impacts of inflation across city operations. And maybe we can skip this one, unassigned fund balance, but
well, I think I always like talking about the unassigned fund balance. And then what this is really showing is that one of the strategies that we are using to get through this year is there is some use of one-time funds. Even with those one-time funds, we are maintaining a fund balance, reserves essentially of over $7 million, which is over 9% within the way we calculate it, and it actually doesn't fully count some smaller reserves, which would, if they were counted, in some ways they probably should be counted in the policy, would take us closer to 10%. So we basically have this budget, despite some use of one-time funds, does continue to have healthy reserves, which is important for maintaining our credit rating. This is one of the key metrics that Moody's looks at when they assess our credit rating. When we rebuilt the reserves to that 10% level, that was part of the reason that we were elevated up to a AA credit rating. I believe it's particularly important that we maintain that strong rating right now when we are on the cusp of hundreds of millions of dollars of borrowing for the new high school. There will be significant other borrowing for other infrastructure in the coming years. A small change in a credit rating will have big impacts when you're doing that kind of borrowing in the coming years. We know that the improved credit rating has saved us in excess of, it's locked in savings of more than $20 million for Burlington taxpayers and ratepayers already. That's before this new borrowing where you will get tens of, very substantial additional savings. So it was important that we maintain that, and that was another constraint we were working with.
Right, and we are holding ARPA reserves, right, as we continue to see.
That is a part of a strategy too. We got $27 million from the federal government to help us recover from the pandemic, a remarkable historic investment by the federal government and municipalities. We have committed and spent the majority of that money at this point. However, we still have $1 million in reserve in case we've been too aggressive. We're calling it a revenue replacement reserve in case there are still some revenues that don't fully recover from where they were in 2019 before the pandemic, and that's most of what we have not committed at this point.
And these are those revenues that come in through services that are provided in the community, like parking, like summer camp programming and parks and BCA. And then, of course, the biggest chunk coming from property taxes, which I think is around that non-departmental line must include.
That includes a lot of stuff. That includes sales taxes and gross receipts tax. It includes all the big revenue-generating lines. So,
right.
In addition to the property taxes, I think the total property taxes are around
40. I think it's like 46%.
Yeah,
of the whole
I
budget.
think that's about right.
Yeah.
So it is, the municipal finances are more complicated, more complex than people might think. The number of different ways in which the city generates revenue is it's quite substantial, as you get a little flavor from that last slide.
So let's talk about how folks' household budgets might be affected by these changes.
Yes. So there is some impact on on people's taxes as a result of this budget. The municipal piece of the tax, which when you look at your property tax bill, it's always important to. A lot of people get confused about this and don't realize that when you get what looks like one bill, this property tax bill, it's actually two. You're being billed by two different entities. One by the city for municipal taxes, and then you're being billed by the state for the education taxes. But the city collects both taxes at the same time. The city tax is about 30% of your overall property tax bill, at least before you get any rebates or reductions from the state, which many people do. That municipal side of the property taxes will be going up in the new bills by 6.2%, and that amounts to about a total of, you add these three bullets together, that you get about a $13.60 a month increase for the median home in Burlington, which the current median home is assessed at $370,000. You can kind of scale the increase that you expect to receive from there if you are a owner in Burlington, and that's the impact, which we worked hard to keep it as low as we could. We had a lot of debates about exactly where to land, and we came in at a place that is essentially where inflation is, which to do that while it allows us to maintain the services and to do some of the benefits that we talked about earlier.
Right, so. Maybe amazingly we haven't. So part of the solutions that were pulled together in order to meet this budget included about $750,000 in cuts from what was spent last year, but none of those include services or personnel.
That's right. Those there are a variety of non-personnel budget lines that were trimmed or reduced and eliminated in some cases, and that was a key part of the strategy to get us to a balanced budget.
And these.
This is actually Let's finish up with this, and we're our final couple minutes here. Another thing that I feel good about in this year's budget is that it we had a lot of very candid discussions with the council, with the public, that the challenges we are facing this year, some of them are likely to continue into the future. We certainly hope that inflation is getting better from here, and in fact, we've already negotiated much lower cost of living adjustments for city employees in the next 2 years. So we've already essentially, that our biggest driver of inflation is already controlled for, but we have other trends that are not going away. We will be spending even more on public safety in future years as the police department continues to rebuild to the level that I think there's broad consensus now we need to get to. We need to grow from about 62 officers today to 87 officers a couple years from now. We have never really had a good system as a city for paying for the very substantial vehicle costs that we have, and we basically vehicle costs and our upkeep of buildings and public infrastructure has largely been done through these debt in the past through borrowing, and we are entering a period now where, because we are building this new high school, we are not going to be able to take on large amounts of new debt in the coming years. So we really have a challenging period here. How do we make those investments, continue the progress we've had with infrastructure, continue to properly have the equipment that we need to run the city right through a period when we're going to have some real borrowing constraints. And so what this budget does is fund a number of different studies to look at how we can generate new revenues, how we can make certain areas of government more efficient and have some real savings, and what new revenue streams we may be able to look at in future years. And this budget puts us in a good position to do that. So this coming year, we really will be working on the budget throughout the year from my perspective.
Certainly.
So, Samantha, great. Thank you for joining us. I think that is where we will, I think we'll wrap up. We thank you for joining us for the Burlington Mayor Show for June. We will be back next month, and we hope you'll join us then. And as always, thank you to Town Meeting TV for providing this critical public platform for our most important local discussions. Thank you.